It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here, checking out the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. 85 miles an hour still?
Yes. In fact, the maximum sustained winds at 85 miles an hour. And Hurricane Milton now at the location is at about 10 miles northeast of Cape Canaveral, Florida. The present movement of the storm itself is northeast at 18 miles an hour. So the people on the Gulf Coast side of Florida, on the West Coast, are now starting to feel fewer effects, if any, but certainly in Central and the East Coast there in Florida and up the coast in Georgia, South Carolina, and even further, are seeing the effects of the outer bands of Hurricane Milton and will over the next few hours. But eventually, later today, later this morning, Hurricane Milton will be out in the Atlantic and will become a tropical storm and then dissipate even further. So they will be, as we look for daylight here, in a couple of hours or so there in Florida, they will start to assess the damage. We've seen videos come out from certain areas. I know that downtown Tampa, got a lot of rainfall. They didn't get the worst hit. In terms of storm surge, they were able to avoid the worst of the storm surge, but certainly got 8 to 10 inches of rainfall. And that's what, of course, you're going to see in a massive hurricane like this. And then wind damage that you see, the videos coming out, there's plenty of wind damage to assess. Officials will be doing that with the help of daylight here, starting in a couple of hours.
You know, I think of some of the worst tornado outbreaks that have happened in the Midwest at times. Mm-hmm. You know, when you've had it, I'm telling you, yesterday when you saw, even before the hurricane was there, at least 27 tornadoes reported across Florida. Mm-hmm. These things just pop up. I saw one that was absolutely horrifying. These people around the road. I mean, it's a major highway, and this thing's just boom. I mean, it didn't go slowly. It looked like it was going at 50 miles an hour. Boom, right across.
Because it's traveling with the system. It's different than other supercells. What happened, there was the formation of a supercell area, basically, there in southern and central Florida, as these outer bands, the first outer bands were arriving yesterday, started to spawn these tornadoes. As you mentioned, you had dozens of them that were officially on the ground, and many more tornado warnings during that time. And the battle for those local and state officials at that time was to keep the roads clear. The main roads they wanted to keep clear for access in the wake of Hurricane Milton. They were just trying to do their best to keep those roads clear for as long as they could before the eye wall came ashore. Those look very, very scary, and they happen so quickly.
You have over 3 million people without power right now. You know, DeSantis made one of the strongest statements I've ever seen from a governor. Yesterday when he came out and he just said, look, I want to make this clear. We're in charge. FEMA's not in charge.
Right.
We're in charge.
Right.
This is our thing. We're responsible for this. FEMA will be assisting us, but we're in charge. And we're going to take care of it. You saw that, a Tropicana field, the roof, it's a fabric roof, was blown off. I did see the photo that was out there of all the cots, if that's where the utility workers, were sleeping in order to be ready to go in the morning. I did see one person say, well, that was from Helene.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but he said DeSantis said the other day, it's the largest ever emergency response to get electricity on. You have more workers there, more utility workers than ever been lined up before for a major hurricane.
Yeah, and that's that kind of staging. We think of the staging with big rigs and equipment, large equipment, that is bringing in large equipment to help clear the roads, the main roads first, but also bring in other equipments like the generators, bring in supplies, water, ice, and everything else that they can bring in, and they stage in the areas outside of the path of the storm, of course, in the days and hours ahead of that eye wall coming ashore. But then you think about the manpower that's going to be required in order to rebuild the infrastructure, the power delivery infrastructure. Those lines come down, the trees come down, the lines come down. The high winds sometimes can take those lines down without a tree falling, but mostly it's trees coming down on those lines. And you have those linemen that are out there, and they have to get that up as soon as possible. It's critical. You have, of course, hospitals that have massive generators. Many facilities do, and they rely on those in situations like that. But it is critical that you get that main power infrastructure rebuilt as soon as possible. And the manpower that's needed for that is mind-boggling.
Looking right now at Tampa, going all the way down to Fort Myers, and you really have right now just a few light scattered showers. Mm-hmm. The system really, the hurricane has moved out, and by 11 a.m., it'll be out of Florida.
Yeah,
it'll be out past the East Coast. So, wow, I just wonder what the damage is going to be like, and how much damage. When you look from Sarasota south, especially because they're on the dirty side. Yeah. And they suffered from a couple of, Ian, and then I forgot the hurricane. There's another hurricane that went through there that hit Sarasota. I don't know if it was last year. I can't remember. But they're still cleaning up from the damage, at that point. And we know north of Sarasota, also the damage. I was looking at, there was one from Helene. And this was one representative of a group of restaurants that are all on the beach, like from Sarasota all the way up, I don't know, maybe to Palm Harbor.
Right.
But they had like 7 restaurants, every one of them majorly damaged. One opened, then had to close. The day after they opened, they had to close. Yeah. And just the horror stories out there, and the people, then at their homes, and all the garbage, because they live, near the water, and they flooded. Here we go again, a second time. We'll see whether that happened for all those areas, but because it was a little further south, it looks like that any of the surge from the Gulf around Tampa probably did not meet expectations, and maybe further south of Sarasota probably got more than was originally expected, but we won't know until the morning, until it gets light.
Yeah, seeing some video come out of downtown Tampa, they had heavy rainfall. It was estimated at that time, this goes back a couple of hours, 8 to 10 inches, and probably more. That's just, again, the nature of that heavy rain coming down. But the flooding is always the most dangerous part, with the combination of the storm surges and the rainfall amounts. And then, again, you get into the winds and the structural damage there. Again, the infrastructure with the delivery of power. It's going to take quite some time. It's going to be years in the rebuilding process. Keep these folks in your thoughts and prayers. There are many people that haven't even begun to assess their own personal damage from Helene, not just in Florida, but in Georgia, in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. So keep these individuals in your thoughts and prayers. And we certainly will in the coming days, weeks, months, and years.
Coming up, Kamala has a beer.
I didn't say I guess everybody's doing it.
Why? Yeah. Why?
Podcasts,
vice presidents, and all we're asking is for a couple of cocktails a night here on the show.
Right.
We're not asking for a lot.
And don't ask us to define couple. That's none of your business.
Right.
We'll decide that.
It means a few.
Yeah. We'll drink, you decide. Wait, what? Is that Fox News? Wait. I'm not sure.
The thing is, we're bragging like we would actually drink on the air, and
there's not a chance.
I've had to cut back caffeine.
Yeah,
I've cut back my caffeine like 90%.
No.
And I'm talking like I'm this big drinker.
I had a hangover the other day. Kid you not, over the weekend.
Caffeine
from me? No, Sour Patch Kids candy. Candy. I woke up going, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that last night." What'd you do? I ate Sour Patch Kids. I had sugar. What the heck, man?
I wonder if their podcasts are during the day. I can't imagine if we come in for a pre-show meeting. We got a bottle here. We start drinking.
Well,
it's like at 2:00.
You just start pouring it. It's like,
where are those guys? They're passed out in the hallway.
Yeah, right. No, thanks. I really don't drink because there's just not an opportunity. Trust me, I'm looking for one. But just
we don't have the time to drink. It's a time thing.
Well, because here's the problem. The moment you look away, you're going to miss something. And I really enjoy what I do. And I really don't want to miss it. So maybe later.
But
maybe at some point.
The vice president, I mean, it all the videos came out yesterday, so it was the day before when she was on Colbert. But
right,
it's just the beer. It's so bad. It really, really is bad. The whole Colbert thing. We talked about it the other day. I saw National Review had this same narrative we were on, which was like, do you think that the softball interviews are even worse?
I said that. I said, look, here's the problem. Serious questions, word salad. Then the awkwardness when she's in a setting that's not so serious. I'm right on this. Her problem all along has not been underexposure. It's been the risk of overexposure, and I'm right. I know I'm right about this.
Right, but you have to compare it to other people. To other people, it would not be overexposure. To her, any exposure is overexposure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. For her, overexposure of her is a problem. She's a liability for that reason to her own campaign. And I'm not wrong about that. But by the way, her campaign knows that. That's why it took them 2 months for them to go, oh, okay, we'll do a media blitz now.
Well,
they know it.
It's unprecedented. I never have seen this.
It's weird.
In the covering of politics for over 4 decades.
It's weird.
I've never, ever seen a candidate, maybe there's a local candidate that this has happened to, but for a presidential candidate, for everything that they see or everything that they say, every interview that they do, there's moments that become an absolute damning commercial that the opposition can run against them. I have never seen that. Never.
Well, I said because she said on Colbert, blah, 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 blah. Also, I am not Donald Trump in the audience. Yay! Yesterday, and I almost said it on the air, and I said this earlier, but it bears repeating here for those that are just joining us. I was going to say her best approach, if I'm advising her campaign, is just to go out and end every sentence and say the most important point is, I am not Donald Trump. But the problem with that is, the liability there is, if I'm advising Donald Trump and she's doing that, I'd say, use that in every ad. And then you say, she sure isn't Donald Trump.
Well, it's so bad because that all started from the fact that this is the second or third time, at least in the last week, where they've been asked, how are you different from Biden?
Right.
And the question is on the issues. And she'll say, well, because I'm Kamala Harris, I'm not Joe Biden.
Uh-huh.
Well, because I'm a black woman and Joe Biden is not.
Yeah.
And those answers are just, that's not the question they're asking, because it's obvious they know you're not the same human being.
Right.
It's where do you differ on the issues, and everyone knows she's BSing, and it's cringeworthy when she continues to do it.
Yeah.
But again, what you found about Kamala Harris, if it doesn't work, it means she'll use it multiple times again.
If it's the worst idea, it means that's the one they're going with.
Yeah. It's I've never seen anything like it.
It's weird. It's like a weird Hollywood comedy that really isn't very funny. It's tragic.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by Howes Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Coming up this Friday, USDA is releasing a slew of crop forecasts, including one for the corn and soybean crop.
Really not expecting any big changes. That crop seems to be pretty well set at this point.
But the market demand for that crop, that's not set at all yet. USDA Outlook Chairman Mark Jekanowski says his group is gathering clues on that.
Watching export sales data for these commodities, seen some quite a bit of strength, especially for corn lately. And also, we've seen a little bit of a increase over time in sales of U.S. soybeans to China, which got off to a very slow start, and they're starting to pick up.
So USDA is going to be forecasting not only crop supplies here and around the world, but also U.S. exports and even season average prices for the major commodities. This data deluge comes out Friday noon Eastern Time. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric. I'm Gary. All right, you ready?
Okay, what do you got?
All right, Kamala on Colbert.
All right.
And their beer summit, I guess.
Okay,
here we go.
When you first became the nominee and named Tim Walz as your vice president nominee, people were calling it the vibe election. All the vibes were all good. But elections, I think, are won on vibes because one of the old saws is they just want somebody they can have a beer with. Uh-huh. So would you like to have a beer with me so I can tell people what that's like? Okay. Now, we asked ahead of time because I can't just be giving a drink to the Vice President of the United States without asking. You asked for Miller High Life. You asked Miller High Life. I'm just curious.
Okay, the last time I had beer was at a baseball game with Doug. So,
cheers.
Cheers.
There you go.
There you go. That's what it's about. Bringing back the vibe. The vibe's been gone for a while.
Hey, let me ask you, do we have any tequila right now? Because that's the effect of that audio you just played. I need something strong and immediate. Which means I'm hoping that there will be an Uber driver at some time available here in the future.
The thing is, that's playing yesterday on the internet, because not many people watch Colbert.
No.
You know what, a couple 100,000 maybe?
Oh, no, I think it's more than that. Yeah.
600, is he pulling in 1 million a night?
Yeah, I think all the late night shows are pulling in that.
Are they? Okay, I just don't know. But but it went viral yesterday. As all you got from Democrat operatives in the media was she's getting killed because she won't talk about the issues, and there she is having a beer. I mean, everything that she does undercuts her own campaign.
It's just, it really is like a walking parody of itself every day. Unreal.
On our website, RedEyeRadioShow.com. Show info with stations, podcasts, and more. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So because I had no idea how many people watch late night shows, and we were talking about Kamala drinking a beer with Stephen Colbert and how just cringeworthy it was. And I had no idea, and I asked you how many, and I had lowballed it in my estimate. With new shows, he can pull in 2 to 2.5 million people watching it on average. Repeat shows like half of that, like 1.2.
Yeah.
Did you know, though, that 18 to 49 is only like 10% of that audience?
That's your target demographic for advertising, and that was the concern that NBC had with Leno. And Leno talked about it. They had a problem, with the Conan debacle, and then they brought, Leno back, and Leno was killing it in the amount of the overall amount. But the problem is in that target demographic. Jimmy Kimmel talked about it about a month ago or so. He believes in the next 5 years or so there won't be any late night TV shows. That his show, and he thinks they're all going to be gone. I'm not sure about that, but if you can't get the target demographic on advertising, what it means is you've got to go beyond that. You're going to have to go into the digital. You're going to have a digital presence, which some of them do. They do have their own YouTube channels and digital presence. But the ads really come into play with the stuff. They're on their real estate. In the case of Colbert, CBS, which he stepped in after Letterman. So, but it's, speaking of Letterman, Letterman's still doing a talk show. He's just doing it on Netflix. And the habits have changed. With the 18 to 49, the cutting of the cord meant even network TV, the free TV, was going to be ignored because the ritual is changing. The habits are changing. They're more inclined to have a streaming service, Netflix, Prime, Hulu, whatever, and not or an app, and not watch this. Now, one of the things too is that with CBS being under Paramount, if you got Paramount Plus, I guess you can watch Colbert, but then it becomes a very fragmented audience. The streaming audience is very fragmented. So, yeah, I mean, it's overall it's a sizable audience for late night TV, but it's an older demographic.
Well, it's all, as you said off the air to me, it's all old liberals.
That's
watching a show.
That's basically what they.
Which brings me to the point that we said yesterday. When you look at The View, liberals watch that show.
Yeah.
When you Colbert, liberals watch that show.
Yeah.
So the fact that Harris is going on, what is she attempting to do? I mean, what is her actual goal? To keep the base there? Because you're not converting independents over to you by being on Colbert, not answering questions, as we played earlier, where he seemed to get a little bit irritated, and then having a beer with him in a cringeworthy moment where you look totally uncomfortable, as somebody posted on social media. It's like this is the first beer she ever drank.
Yeah.
It's like, but that goes to our point saying, if she does 60 Minutes, you probably get a lot of, Democrats, independents. I think most conservatives have been tainted by the bias of 60 Minutes. They may still watch occasionally, but she did horrible there. So if the answer that, okay, we can't be on any type of media that's even considered serious to any type of degree, even if they have a little bit of a bias, because I can't handle the tough questions, well, then she goes on the fluff shows. It doesn't help her.
No, it doesn't. And you look at the ratings of The View when they averaged, this goes back earlier, let's see here. Was that from this year? Some of this goes back to 21, and some of this is more updated. But they average in their target demographic just like 200,000 to 300,000 women 18 to 49 is their target demographic. Wow. They have a overall audience of, a couple million, 2.1 to 2.3, maybe 2.4 million. But the demographic that they target is only a small portion of that. And, they're still on the air. They've been on the air for years.
Oh, yeah.
So they're selling ads to somebody. And I'm sure their lawyers are making sure they don't.
I don't think my concern was their profit margin. It was trying to figure out whether any of this is actually effective.
My point is the viability
in getting independence.
Yeah, my point is the viability, and the viability then, of course, facilitates the reach to the overall point of who is going to, our overall question of who's watching it, who's tuning in, and what kind of influence is there? Because you say, well, they clearly selected these shows for a reason. You're talking about the Kamala Harris campaign. They clearly did their homework and know which shows to go on. You're talking, again, about the Kamala Harris campaign. Because typically I would be with you saying, no, they researched the daylights out of it. But you're talking about the Kamala Harris campaign.
There's a solid point there, because if you haven't as a campaign figured out what your strategy is going to be, and you're sending her out there and you haven't figured out what your strategy is, she doesn't know what the strategy is, there is nothing but negative comments even coming from her own side on this. Look, one of the things we said about when we advised Trump, don't do any more interviews with opposition media. You don't need to do it.
Right.
When he went on the black journalists and got tied up in arguing identity politics by arguing identity politics. Mm-hmm. And we said, don't do it.
You don't need to.
Stop it. But the problem was there, he was being criticized. It's not if you're criticized by the opposition, it's when both sides are criticizing you. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened to Trump then, and he stopped doing it.
Right.
He really, for all intents and purposes, stopped doing it. And J.D. Vance, when he came aboard, then he was the one that goes on the opposition media, and he handles that good. And we said, people are good at different things. People are a lot better at certain things. J.D. Vance is great talking to opposition media. He's wonderful.
Right.
Trump can be okay. On the debate, I believe Trump won the debates. The first one, he didn't have to do anything because Biden was self-destructing. In the second one, I cared about the issues.
Yeah.
And so I went, he won. Independents don't necessarily just care about the issues. It's how you present them and how you do it. And that's why J.D. Vance has got so many compliments, because he's able to convince everyone independent. He's able to keep his base together and convince independents by having incredible, impeccable arguments where he covers every single base. Trump isn't like that. He may be that in policy, but he hasn't been in that a lot of times in promotion, which has been part of the criticism.
Yeah.
That probably all Republicans are willing to admit now. Mm-hmm. They weren't a couple of years ago, but now they're willing to admit, okay, sometimes how he talks is not the best. But with her, everything is cringeworthy. She can't talk. She can't make the point to friendly media. Trump could always make the point to friendly media. That's why he can make the point in a speech.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she can't do opposition, and she can't even do friendly. That's the problem.
Well, and that's been, again, the question all along. Why aren't you out? And she, as a sitting vice president and the nominee, all you have to do is have someone make the phone call. You're on that day. Name the show you want to be on, because all the networks are in her favor.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are trying to be surrogates for her. So then the question is, why aren't you? That's what I think they were confounded about or confounded by, up till a few weeks ago. Well, why isn't she even, talking to us? We know why she's not going on Fox News or Newsmax, but why isn't she going on the Today Show, or why isn't she going on The View, or, Colbert, or wherever? And why isn't she everywhere? Because that's the thing. With so many liberal media outlets, she could be every single day. It could be 2 or 3 appearances. And that's what you hope to do. When she said the other night, was it 60 Minutes that asked her, well, why haven't you done, more? I forget which interview it was where they asked her that. And she says, well, I've been the nominee for whatever it was.
70 days.
70 days. And it's like, that's the worst answer ever. We know that. Where have you been for 70 days? And that's the whole point. That's their whole point.
Here's the example of one of the examples. This is when Colbert, this is the second time he asked her the question, about, how she could separate herself from Biden.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Polling shows that a lot of people, especially independent voters, really want this to be a change election, and that they tend to break for you in terms of thinking about change. You are a member of the President's administration. Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of... But also, I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump. And so when we think about the significance of what this next generation of leadership looks like, were I to be elected president, it is about, frankly, I love the American people, and I believe in our country. I love that it is our character and nature to be an ambitious people. We have aspirations, we have dreams, we have incredible work ethic.
Have you had enough? Because she uses that's one of her crutches right there. She doesn't answer a question by complimenting the people that may be watching. But she doesn't answer the question.
It's just getting worse.
Yeah, it is.
And it's proving my point that her campaign has known all along that her liability isn't underexposure, it's overexposure. And for her, that means any exposure.
Yeah.
Any level of exposure
is horrible.
It's not even a word salad. It's just rambling to the point where the person asking the question at the end of it goes, I'm sorry, what was the question again? When it's normally the person answering the question that says that. That's how bad it is. She just goes off on this trail. Of not answering the question because she doesn't know. And here's the thing, too. I've only been the nominee for 70 days, which means you've got less time, which means you get more in during that time. That's the whole point. You should have been doing 5 interviews a day, 7 days a week to make up for the lost time. And now we know why. Everybody's seeing why you didn't and why your campaign knows you shouldn't.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So, of course, to end the show today, I was like, I haven't looked at the Babylon Bee for a couple of days.
Right,
here.
yeah.
How they handling all this stuff. Here's one of the headlines. I wouldn't have done anything differently, says incumbent, promising to do everything differently.
Exactly.
And my favorite one Kamala announces plan to tell Hurricane Milton, don't.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, brutal.
Well, they might do like Trump is doing. Just start posting her interviews. That's comedy in and of itself. But you look at where she is right now, the appearances she's making this week, and I suspect this is going to be short-lived. And for all the reasons we're talking about. Because the internals are coming back likely that this isn't working. In fact, it's hurting.
Well, the internals are coming back. That's what you got out of yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday was a clear indication.
That's what it felt like. It just, and I felt after the view, I thought, okay, this isn't going to go on, but maybe this week, and I think they're going to be done.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.